Hi, welcome to this video about food safety, HACCP, and the different kinds of hazards and how this applies to you. When it comes to food safety, we use what's called a HACCP approach to food safety. HACCP stands for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. In simple terms, the hazard analysis requires us to look at how likely something is to go wrong and what's the consequence to our customers. And if the risk is high, we put in a critical control point before something goes wrong, proactively, logically, and systematically. When it comes to HACCP, we've got at least 5 different kinds of hazards that we try to manage at our company. The first group of hazards is called foreign matter or physical hazards. Something you and me can see, feel, or touch that might get into the food. So for example, you could have some hair fall off your head or your face into food. What this means is you'll need to wear a hat or hairnet in a processing area to minimize this. That's an approach which is proactive in terms of minimizing the risk. Other examples of foreign matter include metal, plastic, glass, paper and cardboard, wood, etc. These shouldn't be in food. They cause a foreign matter risk to customers. If they consume it, they could damage their mouth, damage their throat, and some customers can potentially get quite ill and potentially die depending on the foreign matter. So we want to check our food to prevent foreign matter getting into our food, getting into our dough, getting into any processing that we are looking after. The next group of hazards are chemical hazards. Chemicals that should not be in or near food. So it's really important you're only using approved chemicals in your processing area, and all chemicals are labeled. That's really important. Make sure we're using no unapproved chemicals. It's important that all chemicals in your department are labeled so that we know exactly what the chemical is in what bottle. Other examples of chemical hazards include, for example, a lubricant that might not be approved for a food processing environment, or sulfites or chemicals that might get into our processing environment that are not allowed in food, and particularly in the food that you're processing. So that's really important that we follow the recipes and we're checking all our chemicals in the processing area, because if it gets into food, customers can get quite sick and potentially ill. The third group of hazards refers to microbiological hazards. Microbiological hazards include things like mold and mycotoxins. Mycotoxins can not only make us sick because they're chemicals as well, they can stay in the food after cooking. So it's really important that we are not only checking for it, but we're minimizing mold forming by cleaning our food processing areas regularly. So that's mold. When it comes to bacteria, there's different kinds of bacteria that can get into the food processing area. But an important bacteria we want to minimize in our food processing area is listeria, for example. We don't want any listeria in our processing area. We make sure we clean down regularly. Listeria is a very opportunistic bacteria. If you're a customer with a low immune system, or if you're young or old or pregnant or immunocompromised, you can get very sick from listeria. It can incubate in a customer's body for many days before it makes them sick. And in some cases, customers can potentially die. It's really important we minimize this through a HACCP perspective of cleaning down all our workplaces regularly, making sure that we're cleaning down, and if we're signing off a record saying we're cleaning down, it's genuinely done. We also check our chillers, refrigerators, any cold places, because that's where Listeria likes to grow. Yeah, so good cleaning, not just for Listeria, but for other bacteria like Staphylococcus aureus that might come from people. The next microbiological hazard are viruses. So we keep viruses out with good illness management. We also keep it out with good PPE in the processing area and good hygiene, making sure we're washing our hands well for at least 20 seconds and using a sanitizer before returning to work. So that's our third group of hazards. Microbiological hazards. Our next group of hazards are allergenic hazards. What are allergens? Allergens are generally proteins that get into our body, and when they get into our body, we have what's called an immune system response. Mast cells in our body will attack the proteins and essentially produce a histamine chemical into the stomach, into the bloodstream. So the amount of histamine that gets released determines the kind of symptoms. So if it's a little bit of histamine, the customer will go into a rash, swelling, redness, red eyes. If it's a lot of histamine, they can go into anaphylactic shock and potentially collapse. So how do we manage this risk? And what are the allergen risks? So when it comes to allergens, the different kinds of allergens are peanuts, seafood, dairy, eggs, sesame seeds, sulfites, gluten, tree nuts, soy, and lupins. Yep. For our global customers, we also manage risks such as our celery and mustard seeds. When it comes to our own product at our company, we guarantee to our customers that all our product is gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. So it's really important we are managing these risks. How do we manage these risks from a HACCP perspective? We have different color scoops. We have color coding around the plant and the processing area. We don't mix ingredients. We make sure we are labeling ingredients, labeling them correctly and having a good changeover between product types so we don't make any errors when it comes to labeling. So that's your allergenic group of hazards. What are intolerances and how are they different? An intolerance is when a customer might have a product and they might not have an immune system response, but it goes into their stomach, into their digestive system, and they might not be able to digest it like you and me. That's the difference between a food allergy and a food intolerance. And just to reconfirm, we got to manage and avoid all risk from gluten, soy, and dairy. Really, really important. Our next group of hazards are labeling hazards, and this is connected to our allergen management hazard. So really important, if you're labeling something, it's accurate. We keep all labels up to date. We check the names, we check the dates, and we transcribe this into our record keeping systems. So labeling hazards also really important in the packaging area of the plant. Really important in the packing area that the supervisors and the operators are double checking that we've got the right product on the line with the right labels and they are accurately labeled as per the regulation. So that's our fifth group of hazards and how HACCP applies in your workplace.